My perfect to everyone sister thought she could ruin my wedding behind sweet smiles, but in front of 100 guests, her games were exposed. Watching her world crumble was just the start. Let me tell you how it really went down. It was supposed to be the best day of my life, you know? Me, Rachel Summers, 27 years old, finally standing at the threshold of a future I had painstakingly built for myself. My engagement party to Ethan, he's 29 and we'd been together for what felt like forever, was finally happening. We'd survived the rough patches, made plans, and now, standing in a room full of our friends and family, everything felt like it had clicked into place. The venue? Perfect. Stylish guests in their best attire? Check. Twinkling fairy lights casting a warm glow over everyone? Of course. The music? A perfect mix of upbeat tunes and slow romantic songs that perfectly captured the mood of the night. Most importantly, I was happy. Really happy. Finally, I could take a breath and enjoy this perfect moment. Well, that is until she decided to make her grand entrance. Jessica. My younger sister, 25. The golden girl of our family. If you'd ever seen her, you'd understand what I mean. My parents, oh, they light up like Christmas trees every time she walks into a room, as if she were some kind of celebrity gracing us with her presence. She had it all. The kind of thick, bouncy hair you only see in shampoo commercials. An aura of charisma so blinding it made people gravitate toward her like planets to a sun. And of course, the undying admiration of everyone around her. I mean, no matter where she went, Jessica was the star. The moment she stepped into the party, all eyes naturally swiveled to her, as if on command. Even the guests who came specifically to celebrate me found their attention pulled toward her magnetic charm. My aunt, bless her, had flown in for this event just to be here for me. But as soon as Jessica arrived, she was practically glued to my sister, engaged in animated conversation as if she were the bride-to-be. I could have handled that. Honestly, I could have. I had been dealing with Jessica's ability to overshadow me my entire life. But this time, she wasn't just making her entrance. She was ready to put on a whole show. With the confidence of someone walking down a runway, Jessica sauntered through the room, her movements smooth, almost rehearsed. I watched her cut through the crowd like a knife through butter. And where did she head, you ask? Straight to Ethan, of course. My fiancé, as if there was nowhere else more important for her to be. And what does she do the moment she gets to him? Flirts. Yep, she started doing that thing she does. Talking softly, laughing at things that weren't even funny, giving him that signature smirk she's perfected over the years. I know that smirk all too well. It's a weapon, finely honed to melt the hearts of anyone in its path. And then, I saw it. The final straw. She placed her hand on his shoulder, leaning in just a little too close, laughing a little too loudly at whatever joke she had just cracked. That's when I felt it. The heat rising in me like wildfire. My chest tightened and my fists clenched at my sides. I could practically feel the flames licking up my neck as I stood there, trying to smile as if this wasn't my engagement party being hijacked by the Jessica show. I watched their little interaction from a distance, feeling like I was watching a scene from a movie that had gone horribly wrong. My smile at this point was so forced I was sure I'd pulled a muscle. But Jessica, well, she was in her element. My sister had a way of making everyone around her fall under her spell, and Ethan was no exception. He didn't seem to realize what was happening, how she was pulling him in with her charm and perfectly timed laughs. I took a step forward, ready to intervene, but then hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to cause a scene at my own party. Could you imagine the headlines? Bride loses her cool in jealous rage at engagement party. Yeah, no thanks. So I stood there, my heart pounding, my pulse racing as I watched Jessica prolong the conversation with Ethan, drawing more and more attention with each laugh, each flirty gesture. Everyone was watching them now, as if this was the real entertainment of the evening. And Jessica? Oh, she was loving it. She always knew how to be the center of attention. But flirting with my fiancé at my engagement party? That was a new low, even for her. The anger inside me simmered to a boiling point. Jessica wasn't just beautiful. She had this unshakable confidence, as if the world itself revolved around her. She knew exactly what she was doing. And when she laid her hand on Ethan's shoulder like she had some kind of claim on him, I felt myself reach my limit. I was this close to walking over there and ripping her perfectly styled hair out strand by strand. If she wanted a spectacle, I was more than ready to give her one. But for now, I just stood there, my eyes locked on her, seething in silence, trying to remind myself that tonight was supposed to be about me. After the engagement party, I couldn't calm down. Seriously, how could anyone relax when your golden little sister is basically flirting with your fiancé at your own party? That was the limit. I knew Jessica had always loved attention, especially from men. She thrived on it. But flirting with my fiancé? That was too much. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. The scenes from the party kept replaying in my head, like a broken record. Jessica had always been jealous of my successes. That much was obvious. But I thought it was just her usual need to be the center of attention. Who knew she'd take it this far? The next day, I decided to talk to Ethan about it. You know when you're about to bring up something important and the person just brushes it off? Well, that's exactly what Ethan did. "You're probably overthinking it," he said, acting like nothing had happened. "You know how Jessica is with everyone. She's just friendly." Friendly? Really? You call those casual touches friendly? Come on, Ethan. But he kept acting like nothing was wrong, while I sat there replaying everything in my head, over and over again. All those innocent glances Jessica gave him at the party were way too obvious. Of course, I couldn't let it go, so I turned to my mom for support. But as soon as I told her my suspicions, she, as always, just shrugged it off. "You're being too dramatic, Rachel. Jessica's just like that. Everyone always adores her," she said, basically defending her, like she always does. Seriously? This again? Everyone adores her. Of course they do. It's Jessica. She's always been the little princess. And now, apparently, no one can criticize her, even when she crosses the line. The more I watched Jessica in the following weeks, the more I knew something was wrong. Seriously, this wasn't just paranoia. It was a show, and she clearly wanted to be the star. She started coming over more often, under the guise of helping with the wedding preparations. Sounds sweet, right? Yeah, except her help looked more like constant attempts to get closer to Ethan every chance she got. It felt like I was watching a theater production where I was sitting in the back row, while Jessica basked in the spotlight. And honestly, I was starting to think that if there were stage lights and smoke effects, she'd use those too to add to the drama. Every time I turned around, there she was. Accidentally, of course. Classic. Just being interested. One day, I walked into the room and caught them in the middle of one of their innocent conversations. Ethan was telling her something, and Jessica was laughing. Not just laughing, but laughing like he'd just proposed to her instead of me. She literally leaned into him so close, I thought cartoon hearts were about to pop out of her head, like an anime character. And the cherry on top? Her hand, lightly tapping his knee. It was like a silent message. "Look, sis, he may be your fiancé, but right now, he's my audience." My reaction was instant. I walked over and blurted, "What the hell are you doing?" My blood was boiling. I honestly thought my eyes were going to pop out of my head. And Jessica? Still that same innocent smile on her face. "Oh, we're just talking about the wedding," she said in a tone like I'd just scolded her for dropping the cake, not for flirting with my soon-to-be husband. But for me, it was as clear as day. She was deliberately working to win Ethan's attention. Not just win it. She wanted him to feel like she was the center of everything. And it was slowly driving me crazy. As my sister kept acting like this was all some innocent game, I realized it was time to do something about it. You know those moments when you just want to scream, but that's too obvious? Yeah, just causing a scene and accusing her. It was too boring and predictable. She was always good at talking her way out of things, so I had to make sure she buried herself, without any help from me. I decided to wait until the wedding, but not just wait. I started preparing for the final act, one that she, and everyone else, would remember for the rest of their lives. Oh, this moment would be her grand exit, or more accurately, her fall from grace. So I started gathering evidence. Yeah, just like in a spy movie, except instead of dramatic music and car chases, I had Jessica and her clumsy flirting. A couple of weeks before the wedding, I installed a hidden camera in our house. Everything looked innocent. Conversations, laughter, touches. You know, the whole, I'm just a sweet little sister act. But with a camera, sweetheart, you're not just a sweet little sister. You're the star of your own downfall. Of course, I knew the footage would be more than interesting. And as expected, it piled up like a snowball. Every video had Jessica with her friendly smile, leaning a little too close, casually touching Ethan, laughing at his jokes, which, to be honest, weren't even that funny. She was so sure of her invincibility, she didn't even realize how deep a hole she was digging for herself. Honestly, it was even funny. She was trying so hard, like she was the main star of this show, not realizing that she was just the victim in her own trap. The wedding day finally arrived, and, of course, Jessica showed up as if it were her personal show. I don't know what she was thinking when she picked out her dress, but honestly, it looked like she was headed to a party where the theme was all eyes on me, not a wedding. And the funniest part, everyone immediately took the bait. The guests started whispering, and her revealing dress was way too much for a wedding guest, but she acted like it was completely normal. She walked through the room like she was on a runway, smiling like she was about to win a prize for Most Outstanding Person of the Evening. You know that smile, right? The one that says, I'm the star here, and there's nothing you can do about it. Mm-hmm. Except this time, I was ready. When the ceremony started, I had to focus not only on the importance of the moment, but also on how Jessica was practically staring holes into Ethan. Long, suggestive looks. She was so obvious, it almost made me feel embarrassed for her. And then, as soon as Ethan stepped aside to help with some important task, she immediately walked over to him, like, "Oh, you're here? What a coincidence!" Yeah, that was the final straw. I had seen enough and knew I wasn't going to stay quiet any longer. I'd held back all this time, but this moment was what I had been preparing for. Everything was in place. The recordings, the setup cameras, and my readiness to make this night not just my wedding, but a show that Jessica would never forget. She thought she'd outshine me with her looks? Yeah, right. She had no idea that this time I'd be the star, and her role would be to get exposed in front of everyone. At the wedding reception, when everyone was relaxed, chatting, and enjoying the cake, I stood up in front of the guests and said, "Dear guests, today isn't just a wedding. Today's the day the truth comes out." Seriously, like in a dramatic movie. Everyone froze, and the room went so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Nobody knew what was happening, but everyone could feel that something big was about to go down. And among all those faces was Jessica, standing there with her perfect little smile, as if she was thinking, "Oh, everyone's going to look at me again. I'm so amazing." And there she stood, totally unaware that this night was about to become the worst of her life. And me? I calmly pulled out a remote. Yep, a remote. And I turned on the screen to play the footage from the cameras I had cleverly installed at home. And what did the guests see? My sweet little sister flirting with my fiancé, whom, of course, they recognized. All that laughter, those touches, the looks. It was all right there for everyone to see. I confidently said, "This is how my beloved sister prepared for my wedding." It was like the final scene of a courtroom drama, where I was the prosecutor and she was the defendant. And then, there was complete silence. Not just silence, the kind where people literally stop breathing in shock. Jessica, who just a few minutes ago had been standing there basking in the attention, turned pale like she'd seen a ghost. Oh, trust me, she didn't see that ending coming. The guests didn't know how to react. Some started whispering, some covered their mouths, and others just stared wide-eyed. And there she was, my perfect sister, now standing there in the spotlight, but no longer as the star of the night. The guests looked at Jessica like she'd just announced that the earth was flat. Confusion, shock, and, my favorite part, obvious disappointment. All those sweet little smiles she'd been feeding everyone for years had finally faded. She'd been the queen, but her throne crumbled in an instant. Jessica, as always, tried to wriggle out of it. She started mumbling something about a misunderstanding and a joke, but her words just got lost in the wave of disapproval from the guests. People weren't buying her cheap act anymore, and no matter how hard she tried to explain, it came across as pathetic. So pathetic. All those years she'd spent wearing her perfect mask had shattered in one moment, and you could see it. She was falling apart right before everyone's eyes, like a mirror that had shattered into a million pieces. And our parents? Oh, that was the best part. The same parents who always said Jessica was the golden girl were now standing there with faces like kids who had just found out Santa Claus isn't real. Complete shock. They couldn't believe that their little princess turned out to be, well, let's just say, not so innocent. No more excuses, no more, she's just sweet. It was over. The game was up. I stood there, watching Jessica try to escape from this disaster, but all the attention was still on her. Every step she took was like a slow-motion fall. She even tried to slip past the guests, but every stare cut through her fake mask. Everyone got it. Her flawless reputation had cracked like a vase that was too fragile. And finally, she realized it. Her game was over. No more innocent smiles or accidental touches. Nobody believed it anymore. She stormed out of the room, humiliated and defeated. This wasn't just a victory. It was a triumph. After Jessica flew out of the room like a circus monkey whose mask had finally been ripped off, I felt an incredible sense of relief. It was that moment when the air suddenly feels fresher, the music louder, and the cake even tastier. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe freely. Finally, my space was mine again, not an arena for her endless manipulation. Ethan, of course, came up to me, full of apologies. He looked like a kid who had just been caught stealing cookies. "I was too naive to see what was happening," he said. And I actually felt a little sorry for him. Well, almost. I just nodded. Of course you were naive, Ethan. When someone like Jessica is circling around, you either close your eyes or lose your head. Apparently, he chose the latter. We continued with our wedding, but let's be honest, the moment of the big reveal had left its mark. It was like when you accidentally spill wine on a white tablecloth. Yeah, you can wipe it up, but the stain's still there. The guests kept having fun, but the whispers about Jessica were still hanging in the air. Oh well, she created that image for herself, and now she has to live with it. But you know what's the most important part? I finally freed myself from the constant weight my sister had been hanging over me for years. All that pressure, the digs, the manipulation, the attempts to be better. Goodbye. From that day on, I realized that no one would invade my life and ruin my happiness ever again. Especially someone like Jessica. Now I hold the keys to my life, and no one else has a right to them. I looked at Ethan, at our wedding, and I knew this happiness was finally mine.